What's up, kids? Good news. I have not one, but two stories about Jesus that I want to talk to you in this video. So you are getting twice as much awesomeness in this video. I want to talk to you about two stories found in the Gospel of Mark. Side note, for the nerds in the group, Mark is probably the first gospel, the first story of the life and death and resurrection of Jesus that was written, and then Matthew and Luke probably, according to scholars, probably used what Mark had already written down and then changed it and shaped it and moved it to make their story fit who they were writing to a little bit better. Okay, so this is Mark, and this is probably the first gospel, and Mark's telling these two stories about Jesus healing people, and they are awesome. In fact, the way that Mark structures this, the way that Mark lays this out, scholars call it, get this, a Markan sandwich. That's funny. So you've got two pieces of white bread, and then in between you've got your meat and your cheese. So what happens is, in the first piece of white bread, Jesus meets a man named Jairus. And Jairus is a leader of the synagogue, which means that he's probably taking a risk to go hang out with Jesus, because in the synagogue, Jesus wasn't really accepted by everyone. So Jairus, who's like in the uppity ups of the synagogue, goes and he finds Jesus and he says, "Jesus, my daughter is sick. She might even be dead. And I need you to come back with me and put your hands on her," which was a pretty big ask, because in that context, at that time, for these people, to lay your hands on someone who has died would render you unclean. It would mean that you would have to leave your community and go out by yourself until you could be ritually pure again, until a priest could put some water on you and make you pure again. So Jesus says, "Okay, I'll go with you." And then as we leave the white bread and go into the meat and cheese, Jesus meets somebody else. It's a woman, and she has been sick for a long time. She's been sick for about 12 years. And the same sort of thing is happening to her, where her sickness, it makes her unclean, which means that she isn't able to go home, and she lives outside of this community. So she's sort of snuck in. And she's in this crowd of people, and she's worming her way through to try to find Jesus. And actually, according to the rules of the day, whoever she touched would become ritually unclean, and they would have to go to the priest if they knew that what she was doing was bringing this sickness into this group of people. But she finds Jesus because she has gone to doctor after doctor after doctor, and nobody could help her. And she has spent all of her money on attempting to be healed. But it says that she's not getting better, she's getting worse. And this is like her last ditch effort, is to find Jesus, this person that she's heard so much about, and all of the things that he can do in the way that he's healed people. He's on his way to go heal a little girl. And she thinks, if I could just reach out and touch his cloak, his jacket, the pull strings on his hoodie, like just some part of the clothes that are attached to him. If I could touch that, then I will be healed. I just know it. So she worms her way through this big crowd, and she finally gets near enough to Jesus that she reaches out and she touches his cloak, and immediately she's healed, and she knows it. And Jesus knows it too, because he says, "Who touched me?" And now just think about it. This is a big crowd, and there's people all over the place, shoulder to shoulder. And his disciples are thinking like, well, how do we know? Like, there's people all around. A lot of people have touched you, Jesus. But he's like, no, who touched me? And the woman, because she knew that she was healed, she sort of inches her way forward and presents herself before Jesus. It says that she knew what had happened to her, and she comes in fear and trembling. And she fell down and she told him everything. And Jesus says to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." So Jesus is on his way to Jairus' house to heal this little girl. And on the way, there's this woman who's been sick for 12 years. She's been outside of her home. She's been outside of the community. She hasn't been able to see her friends or her family. And finally, she gets so desperate that she goes to find Jesus just to touch his garment. And when she does, she's healed, and Jesus knows it, and she knows it. And Jesus says, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. And then we get to the bottom piece of white bread, the other part of this story, the last part. Remember Jairus, he's got this problem, and maybe he sees this whole thing playing out, and he's like, Jesus, come on, we don't have time to be healing everybody. We've got to go get my daughter and make sure she's okay. And while he's still speaking, it says that some people came from Jairus' house, and they say, Jairus, your daughter, she's died. Don't bring Jesus, it's over. Everything that you were hoping for, it's over. But Jesus overhears this conversation, and he says to Jairus, and he looks at him, he says, Jairus, don't fear, just believe. And then Jesus, he allows nobody to follow him except for Peter, James, and John, like his inner crew. And they go into the house, and there's all these people there, and everybody is weeping outside of the house. This was actually something that they did in the first century in this time. Like, they would have people that go there to weep and to mourn and to participate. When people are sad, like, it's good to have other sad people around, and this is what they were doing. And he goes in, and he sees this happening, and he says, why are you guys doing this? Why are you making such a commotion? Why are you crying? The child is not dead. She's asleep. And like, the people sort of break character, and they stop crying, and they say, no, Jesus, she's dead. We know that. The text says that they laughed at him. They go from weeping on behalf of Jairus and the family to laughing at Jesus and how wrong he was. And then he takes all of them outside. He puts all of them out of the house, and he takes Jairus and Jairus' wife, the girl's mother, and they go to where she was. And it says that Jesus, he took her by the hand. And remember, if she's dead, this makes Jesus unclean, impure. Like, he's breaking the rules here. But he reaches out, he touches her hand, and he says in Aramaic, Talitha kum. And this is a really, really cool moment in scripture. It's so cool, in fact, that Miss Tessa has this tattooed on her wrist. Like, these words are powerful, because what it means is, little girl, it's time to get up. Do you guys ever like sleep in? Sometimes. My kids don't. They get up at like 5:30 in the morning. But have you ever been like asleep, and then one of your parents comes in, or a grandparent or somebody, just to wake you up, maybe to get you ready for school, and they say like, it's time to get up now. This is what's happening with Jesus, except the girl isn't just asleep, she's dead. And Jesus reaches out, grabs her hand, and says, little girl, it's time to get up now. We've got things that we have to do, and I just want to wake you up so that you can get back to it. So in this sandwich, Jairus has this problem, says, Jesus, please help. And Jesus is like, okay. And as he's going, he meets this woman, and she has this sickness that she's had for years and years, 12 years. She spent all her money, and now she's sick, and she just doesn't have any hope. She just wants to touch Jesus's robe or his garment just so that she can be healed. And she does, and she is healed. And Jesus keeps going and hears that the girl is dead, and says, don't believe them, just trust. I got this under control. And when he gets in the house, he holds her hand and he says, little girl, it's time to get up, because we have work to do. This story is so cool. These stories in the Gospel of Mark, because what it teaches us is that Jesus defies the rules to find his people. The people that have been pushed out of the community, he touches them. The people that are rendered unclean and impure, he touches them. He risks it all because he wants so badly to heal and restore. And Jesus wants to heal and restore you too. There's so much that we can learn from this story. It's so awesome. Jesus is just healing people, and he's doing this work, and he's getting them to believe and to trust, and he's risking everything for them. And he still is taking risks for us today. He loves you guys so much, and he just wants you to believe and trust and follow him. I'm telling you, when you do, you will see beautiful, restorative things happen. So, that's the story. That's 2 of them. Not 1, but 2 stories for the price of 1. Actually, for the price of 0, because you pay nothing to be here. So thank you, and you're welcome, and be blessed. Love you guys. See you soon.